So if you want a visual of that, go watch Inside Out 2. Not sponsored by Pixar, but we are open if you'd like to reach out to us. But I mean, literally, in that movie, like it's the inside of Riley's head, and I'm not spoiling anything. It's in the trailers. She goes through puberty in the second movie, and like there's the control board in her head, and then it like expands to be 3 times as big during puberty, right? Because they replace it.
Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
I'm Eric.
Eric and Lucas are licensed professional counselors, and this is part 3 of a series of podcasts we're doing called 5 Mistakes That Dads Make with Their Teen Daughters.
So we have here, I don't know, are these chronological in any way? They're really not, are they?
I don't think so.
Because we're all talking about, like, I guess chronologically they're all happening at the same time. But yeah, you had here as the original title, the mistake of treating her like she is a little girl or trying to force her to be one. So like, what would a father be? Because I mean, I think we eventually ended up titling this like feeling like losing your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
What would be happening that a father would feel like he's losing his kid? What's happening there that you're thinking of?
You know, from what I've kind of looked at in our culture, dads and daughters become really close as she's a little girl growing up. And, sometimes it's because of puberty that can push that wedge in there. We've talked about that.
Yeah, that was part 2, I think.
But another part of that is just that developing independence that human beings have separates her more and more from dad. You know, she's wanting to be her own person. She's wanting to kind of go out in the world a little more, have her independence, do different things, maybe not as much with dad anymore, but, on her own. With boys, we kind of encourage that, go out into the world and explore. And with girls, we're like, oh, you could get pregnant, stay home.
That accelerated quickly.
Yes.
Right. But it's one
true,
of the
though.
truths.
I mean, when you say it, I'm like, I follow that. Kind of.
There's a very unfairness in there. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, what we forget is that your relationship with either of your kids, because it's not that the boys can't be out there getting girls pregnant.
I was just going to say that would kind of be equally something to avoid.
But the relationship that you've cultivated is one of the biggest defenses against that and a whole lot of things. I mean, why does your child not go to the store and steal? Hopefully it's for the fear of what would happen at home to your relationship, the disappointment, I don't want to do that because I don't want my dad to be disappointed in my behavior. It's not something that is going to work all the time, every time, but the closer you are, the more that is one of the first thoughts that comes in there, So
you have here as in one of your descriptions of this section is that she is changing. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're saying that the mistake is trying to stop the changing, which as kids grow up, change is inevitable. At all the segments, but like the teenage years have some notable changes in them that are different from, going from age 5 to 7. There's change there too.
There is change there. For the girls though, when their bodies are changing, we've talked about that in other podcasts, that begins to separate the relationship between them and dad. So if they stay a little girl, that relationship stays the same. There's also new peaks and valleys with the emotions. Now it happens with guys too, but it happens more with girls. And so men are not great with tears and not great with all of these different roller coaster of emotions. It's not that we're not built for that. It's that we're not trained and taught and mentored for that. Because dads can be great in those types of situations. They just have to learn not to be swayed by those emotions and not to take those emotions personally. That's one of the biggest pieces.
There's definitely some, I wonder if we'd be having this same discussion in the same way if we were in Canada or Germany or India, right? So we are Americans. And so American men act, the way we do. And, probably, a father raising his daughter in India might not have the exact same,
it's a different culture.
Experiences or challenges or.
Yeah. For our culture, these are kind of the things that we face. And so wanting her to remain the same as she's been, because the relationship was good.
Yeah. I think that's the core of like what this segment is about, is that like I really enjoyed, and I guess that's assuming that you did enjoy the way things were. But that's kind of what we're aiming at. Is like I enjoyed the way things were, and now they're changing and don't change.
Right. Oh wow, I just couldn't talk at all. Whereas understanding that those changes are going to be there and learning how to be able to roll with those different changes, it's still your little girl. And if you've built that connection in there, then that connection is still there. You're just learning new ways at different times to be able to kind of connect with the changes that are occurring. She doesn't know what's firing off in her body. And, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, when something happened between her and her peers, she handled it fine. Now she's just falling apart. And some of that is her learning how to be able to control and regulate the different changes of hormones that are happening within her body. Again, it happens with boys as well. It's just not generally to the same degree.
So if you want a visual of that, go watch Inside Out 2. Not sponsored by Pixar, but we are open if you'd like to reach out to us. But I mean, literally,
it's a great idea.
But I mean, like in that movie, like it's the inside of Riley's head, and I'm not spoiling anything. It's in the trailers. She goes through puberty in the second movie, and like there's the control board in her head, and then it like expands to be 3 times as big during puberty, right? Because they replace it.
Right.
But I mean, I think the thing that you're also saying is that all of the old stuff is still there. There's just additive.
Right.
She's still the little girl that she was, but also more than that too.
Well, and let me give you a really good advantage in this situation. Her mother went through it too.
Right.
So if you can team with mom and be able to glean insight from her, hey, what worked for you? I mean, did you go through some of these different things? What works, what's good and helpful, when you were going through them, and, let's see if any of those will work with her as well.
You were talking about that when we were doing like the physical development and changes that girls go through, and you have a cheat code, like go talk to your wife.
Yep.
Because if you're not sure what's going on, well, she had, and you were talking about the amount of similarities between like mom and like, oh yeah, I had the same thing. So
one of the things I hear quite often from moms are, hey, all I had were girls. I don't know anything about boys. So now that there's a boy involved, it's on him.
Oh, vice versa.
The dad has to explain to me what is going on, because I don't understand anything about boys and what they go through and how it works. And, so it's a both way support that's in there, and it can be a very valuable piece so that you can better understand that your little girl is not disintegrating, she's not going away, she's not running away, she did not get sucked up by aliens and replaced with something that is a protoplasm trying to assimilate as a human being,
trying to pass.
And I think one of the most unfortunate things is that while they're going through all those changes, that's when they're most looking for dad to be a stable, consistent force, and then that's when some dads are like, this is getting crazy, I'm getting out of here. And I kind of think of that whole, you see the memes or the things where it shows like men with like one control panel, one light, one button, and women with 1,000 toggles and switches. And I think that they just go, this child that was more simple and I understood is now becoming the thing that scares me. And
a woman.
Yeah. And then they're like, I can't be stable. Yeah. So, so don't be
I
scared.
think that's a good reference.
Yeah.
In there. The key is keep taking her out and doing things.
Right. The fundamentals didn't change.
Yeah. It didn't change. She's a human being. Relational is the key glue for human beings, and you have a blood bond, and so that's already something that is drawing her to you. If she's not your blood, the time that you spend with her will begin to build on equaling that force.
Right. And that's such a huge thing. And people who have listened to some of our other podcasts and materials are familiar with some of those. And if you are hearing some of these for the first time, definitely check out some of those podcasts and courses where we talk about that. But I've always found it fascinating that sometimes I'll ask you guys a very specific question, like, well, what about this and what about that? And it seems like so many things can be made simple or have better solutions when you have that strong relationship. And it seems like there's all kinds of technical ways you can go, well, what if we do this? What if we put all these rules in place? How are we going to deal with boys sneaking in and running out the window and all this? And yeah, there's some merit to some of those, but at the end of the day, it seems like so much of it just comes down to having a relationship where your daughter could talk to you and tell you what's going on and not be afraid that you're going to lose it. And,
Well, I think that's just human.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, how do you have good relationships with people is like you dedicate time to them. And we're talking about fathers and teenage daughters, but I mean, like, I'm literally reading a book about couples, and it's the same principle.
Yeah.
It's the same principle but when it comes to kids and raising kids, they need that same principle even more.
Sure.
Because it's in there and it's a part of that raising. There's studies that were done that showed boys need great dads, girls need super dads. There's different needs that are pulled from both, and your relationship is so key. I've mentioned it many times. I am the strongest-willed person I've ever known. I'm not blaming my dad, but he didn't understand the power he had in relational connection. His idea of that is, I'll just take you around with me and that'll do that.
To the places I was going anyway.
Or to the projects I was doing, and you will learn and you will like it. Well, it was very much my relationship with my dad, very similar to Harrison Ford and Sean Connery on film in the Indiana Jones movies. Sean Connery was very much in his books and doing his different things, and that was kind of my dad. And I was very much, the world is an adventure, and I must go and find it. And so I'm out there all the time. So when he wants me to stay on a Saturday, biggest play day of the week, and trust me, I had plans. Even at 7, I had things lined up and listed up and games going and things that would happen. And it was a great adventure. And I had to sit there and hand him wrenches while he fixed the lawnmower. And he thought it would be good for me to learn. I can tell you, I learned nothing.
Because, I mean, like, on some level, yes, that would be good for you to learn.
Yes.
But you didn't because
it was interrupting, and he didn't understand that if he were to, like when I came to him and said, hey, you want to play a game? When he said yes, that actually built in, deposited in the bank reserves of me, that when he said, hey, I want to show you how to do the lawnmower, I'm like much more willing to learn how to be able to do that by his side, because he put that time in that I was asking for. And that's the hard part that a lot of parents struggle with, is that putting time in with your child is not the time that you may be thinking it is. Hey, I took them to the store, or they were out there in the shop with me. Right. Now, it can be, but it's also the time that they say, will you do this with me? And they have a specific thing of what this is.
The kid-initiated portion.
Yeah.
So I think maybe you said it, but maybe I missed it. Why do girls need super dads compared to boys?
Girls glean a cornerstone of their personality development, huge cornerstone, from their relationship with their dads. Girls will pick men in their future that are exactly the representation of who their dad was. And I've heard many girls, many women say, yeah, I didn't have a great dad, or I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, and it's taking me a decade into adulthood to realize I keep trying to date my dad or marry my dad, not in a bad way, but in the personality type, the different characteristics that their dad had. So if they weren't good characteristics, they're getting into abusive relationships quite often. Because that relationship with their dad makes an imprint.
I think I figured out that that's the reason why we have a podcast about manhandling the enemy, right? Why you protect your daughter from people who are trying to date her. And I think it's because you're showing everyone in the equation how men are supposed to be, how men are supposed to treat women. You're showing your daughter, you are something to be protected until I know who this other person is. And then you're showing this other person, my daughter is a person to be protected. And if you like screw that up, there will be consequences. And it's not, I think there's a sense of like messing with someone that's kind of fun, of like, I don't think I'm going to deny that part, but I think that's the real reason. It's not that, because I had somebody ask me like, well, do you want the relationship that your daughter has with a person that she's dating to be based on a fear of you? And it's like, well, no, that's not the reason. And I can understand why somebody would come to that conclusion, because you're threatening them. Right. But it's like, I think you're trying to demonstrate that this is how men treat women. This is how dads treat daughters. And if you want to be a part of this, then you need to like do that too for her. Because if you want to take over my role, I'm showing you what my role is. And it kind of took me a minute to come to that conclusion, but I think that's what we're talking about here too. Yeah, and some of that to me even comes back to, you think about it, now some people would say this is a very old-fashioned way of thinking, but I don't mind being old-fashioned if it's okay, if we've thought about it. Yeah, the whole, I like old-fashioned donuts. The whole guy going, wow, I need to get to know this girl's dad, and then I'm going to ask her for permission to date or marry. Yeah, that old school business. Yeah, to marry the daughter. But that doesn't necessarily have to mean that came out of fear. To me, a lot of that comes out of respect. Of you go, wow, I really respect your dad and see that he is a good man and he has cared for you. And now that I am wanting to date your daughter or marry your daughter, you're kind of trying to get your way in there and get his approval, which, in some cases could go bad, but sure. Anything could go bad. Yeah.
Yeah, anything can go bad because human beings have this ability to have a will. Yeah. But with dads, because a part of it is that dad and daughter relationship is such a close piece, or at least it can be. And a part of, the protection that a dad provides his daughters is his relationship to them. Yeah. So he can help her understand the guy code. Yeah. He can help her understand the unwritten rules that are coming her way. One of the girls that I had, she was a genius IQ, and I taught her every line of every page of the guy code, and boys would come her way, and, whether they were, it was merciless when they were high school peers, but when they were older guys, that's when, it was a real protection for her. But they would come and make their moves, and she would go, oh, okay, this is supposed to mean this, and I'm supposed to do this, and this is what this is supposed to intend. And yeah, I got the book. And they would just kind of walk away, like, tuck their tails between their legs away. And then she'd turn to me, or she'd come to me and say, yeah, he just wanted sex. And
that really is, I think, the end of every chapter in the Guy Code book, isn't it?
That's what a lot of those, except the ones, the rules for the bathroom and guys. Yeah,
fair.
Yeah, that one's that has that. But yes, everything.
All the chapter relating to women, right?
Right.
Exactly. Generically.
and this thing, really does exist. But and a part of this is that there's this unwritten rule that we're not supposed to let girls know. We're not supposed to let women know about the Guy Code.
Bros before, well.
It is. If you finish that, because it's literally, we're just quoting from the Guy Code that's been passed down, is it says bros before hoes. I hate that, because it right there in that one sentence,
it encapsulates a lot of the.
Yep. It demeans women. and it demeans them as second-class citizens, and it demeans them as objects. And it's a part of what this code does is makes your daughters into an object. Why do you want to be loyal to that? Don't do that. Tell them.
Don't do that.
Yeah. I remember with that girl, I was at her apartment one time, and her boyfriend was there, and she came through and made some mention about the garbage needed to be taken out, or I think she brought it, to the door, or something. And she walked away to get something else, and he just looked at me and goes, "Where did she get this idea that guys need to take out the garbage? I mean, she brought it there to the front door. Why didn't she just take it all the way down? Why do I have to do it?" And he just suddenly, it dawned on him, and his eyes got big, and he goes, "Oh crap, it was you, wasn't it?" I'm like, yes. She told me at one point, there are men all over this country who absolutely hate you, and they don't even know your name, or they only know your name because she would talk about me a lot. And I'm like, oh, it's because what I taught you to expect and how to be treated. And she goes, yeah, and there's so many guys that just, they don't want to do it. And you as a dad teaching your daughter, this is how you should be treated. Now if you teach her she should be treated this way, and then you treat her mother differently,
that ain't going to go well.
Yeah. It's not gonna land the way you want it to. But your relationship with her is highly pivotal and highly powerful. Soak it up, enjoy it. You take her out to do things, just you and her as she gets older. Spend time with her at the house, just you and her. I mean, there's going to be some podcasts here in the future that are, things that get in the way of, moms and dads and their parenting. And some of it is some of this thing that I just absolutely love. I love technology. But technology has a way of creeping in there, and it can suck up our time. And, she was 6 or he was 7, and then suddenly we blinked, and now she's 16 and he's 17. What happened? Who got that time? The guys online, or however that went.
That might be a good place to wrap this one up.
Sure.
We've got a million more things to talk about, obviously. But
yeah, so definitely, if you missed the earlier pieces of this, part 1 and 2, go back and make sure to check that out. Leave us a comment and sort of let us know what your experience with some of the things we talked about today has been.
Particularly if you're from another country, right?
Yeah.
If there's because we kind of talk about we talk as American men because that's what we are. And if you're an Indian man, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, different perspectives. But let us know in the comments, and we will see you on the next episode.